Hey guys, today we are going to talk about Thomas Jefferson. And before we get started, just a couple of updates. I was able to get the extension unlimited code for the Screencastify, whatever this application is that we're using. So that means no more 5-minute limit. That is awesome for us. But that means for you, it may be helpful to have a pencil or pen or something to write with nearby so that if you need to pause it and make notes, you can, or you can write down questions so that you have questions ready to go for the Q&A session that we'll have as a class that you can be ready to ask me about. Another thing is I have my sweet kitty here. This is Ozzy. Ozzy says hi to everybody. He's so excited to have me all the time. So he's going to be joining in on some things. We are going to break Thomas Jefferson down into a 2, potentially 3-part video. So that way you guys can get the information you need. There are a little bit more complex ideas, but let's go ahead and get started. So Thomas Jefferson is going to be our 3rd president. I'm not going to go over the review with you right now, just because many of these questions you guys can go back in your notes and find. If you need a specific one answered, again, bring it up in the Q&A. All right, let's talk about his election. So, election of 1800, we are going to have John Adams trying to run for a 2nd term. And Jefferson is going to be the guy to represent the Republicans. Remember, they are the Democratic Republicans. We're shortening it to Republicans. The way we would describe this election is extremely emotional. So no different than the 2016 election. Both sides, both parties think that the other party is going to ruin the entire country. Everybody is paying attention. Everybody who can vote, remember we still have voter restrictions. Anybody who can vote is going to vote. But let's look in the past to see kind of what's happened since the election. The Federalists, who had been in control under John Adams and had been running Congress, have lost power because of those Alien and Sedition Acts. They did not pass well with the public. They were mad that they were being censored with the sedition. They were mad that immigrants were being targeted. So your Republicans are going to have a foot up in this election. The Republicans, they are going to cast their votes for 2 front runners. There's Thomas Jefferson, who's been the party leader this whole time. And then there's this guy named Aaron Burr, who's trying to run for president or VP. Since the Federalists and John Adams really don't have anybody going for them, it's going to come down to who's going to win between Jefferson and Aaron Burr. But yet again, we have a problem in the Electoral College. So before 1800, before this election, the way you voted, again, was whoever got the most votes got president, whoever got the 2nd most votes got VP. Now, we saw that as a problem originally with Adams' election because you had 2 separate party members being president and VP. In this case, we actually end up having a tie. You have Jefferson and Aaron Burr who are going to tie in the votes, and we don't really know how to solve that. So after both of these times, we are going to create a new amendment to remedy the problem. We don't want to have any more ties. We don't want to have political parties causing us more issues. So the 12th Amendment discusses how we're going to fix the Electoral College. What we end up deciding is that electors must choose first who they would pick for president. So we have now made a separate category specifically for president. Who do you want? The person who gets the majority of votes gets that job, and then you vote separately for VP. So then anybody who's running for VP, you cast your vote there, and whoever gets the most votes there gets VP. We're also going to give this election of 1800 a nickname and really refer to it as the Revolution of 1800. And the reason we do that is because we have had 2 Federalists as presidents, George Washington serving for 2 terms and then John Adams serving for 1 term. And now we're going to have Jefferson win the 3rd presidency election, and he is a Democratic Republican. Normally at this time, if you had a big party shift like that, you would have a revolution in general. You'd have a new government set up, they would change everything, yada, yada, yada. But this time, because we made the Constitution a living document and endures all of this, we don't have to change our government. It's an example of a peaceful party transition. When Jefferson takes office, he does what most presidents do when they first are inaugurated and give their address. They address the people and say, hey, I know we've had a long run with this election. I know we've said a lot of things, but as Jefferson said, we're all Republicans, we're all Federalists. So he's trying to remind people of the unity of the nation, even if there were all this partisan politics with the parties. Let's talk about TJ as a person. All right. So Thomas Jefferson, he was a Democratic Republican. So he believed in majority. So he wants the state and local level to have most of the power, even though now he's president. So that's kind of ironic. For the national government, he's going to change a lot of things. He's going to run it very in a frugal and simple manner. In other words, he's the guy who actually, if you knock on the door in the middle of the night, he's going to answer it in his PJs. So he doesn't dress up for the occasions. He's not going to spend money trying to be fancy. He believes in limited federal government. So he's a strict interpreter. Remember, that means that if it's not written in the Constitution, you can't do it. So he does not use the elastic clause all that often. And we'll see that as we go on. Some of the things he does domestically as a president, he's going to cut taxes. He wants to pay down the debt. So we're not going to use the national bank as much because we don't want to use credit. We're going to slash expenses. That means that if you had a job with the federal government and you don't really play a role that's big, Jefferson might fire you because we don't need to spend money that we just don't need. And we're going to reduce the military. We're not in a time of war. Therefore, we don't need to spend money on defense. We're going to cut that down. For his foreign affairs, like Adams tried to do and like Washington tried to do, he believes in neutrality. We're not strong enough as a country to go and make any friends or enemies, so we need to stay out of things. His cabinet, remember, every president gets a cabinet, it's his advice group. They are all going to be Republicans. In other words, they all share the same party ideology. A lot of people argue that this is a good thing because then you have a lot more agreement, but you also have to realize if it's all Republican, then you can't really see the other group's side. So there's not really an understanding on the Federalist side. This could cause a problem later on. Overall, Jefferson is still going to stick to his roots. He believes that we're an agrarian or a farming republic. He understands the need for industry. It's also a bit ironic that he is such a statesman, considering he still does believe in the practice of slavery. So there's irony yet again. All men are created equal, except for those who work for him. So that is him as a person. Let's jump forward to one of the biggest successes of his entire presidency. Many of you guys have heard of this. It's called the Louisiana Purchase. So we have all of this land in orange that we do not own. If it is blue, we own it. It is given to us from Britain when we won the war. If it is red, that means it's a state that's already been created. So we are looking out west already, even though we haven't fully formed our west yet. And we are growing our state. So we had our original 13. We create DC as the capital. We build Tennessee, Kentucky, and Vermont. That's because of the Northwest Ordinance that allowed us to enter new states into the Union. Again, we got that land all from Britain in the Treaty of Paris when we won the Revolutionary War. So we are really looking west. Louisiana was owned by France originally. Then in the French and Indian War, it was given to Spain. Remember back when we fought the French and Indian War, everything east of the Mississippi was given to us. Everything west of the Mississippi was given to Spain. And then things changed when Napoleon came to power. So we talked about Napoleon coming to power in Europe when Adams was president. When Napoleon comes to power, he forces Spain to give him back the land. So all of that land had been France's, then it was Spain's, now it's back to being French land in what's called retrocession. So retro means giving back. So they are giving back the land to the French. Here's why we're worried. Our most valued port is New Orleans. That is in Louisiana. That is in that territory. We had made a treaty with Spain under Washington called Pinckney's Treaty that basically gave us full free access to the Mississippi River and to this port. Well, now that Spain doesn't own it, that means the treaty is revoked. It no longer is in existence. So we are very worried, especially our farmers on the frontier, that France is going to start trying to take away our access to the Mississippi River. This is not good. This is going to make it very difficult for our farmers to make money, for them to continue to trade on the Mississippi. We do not want to we do not want to pay taxes to use that port. So the farmers start calling out to Jefferson and saying, hey, President, you got to do something. Luckily for us, Napoleon is actually losing interest in America. If you can imagine being a giant dictator in Europe, it's kind of hard to keep track of where all your land is. So he's more focused on expanding his power in Europe across the Atlantic and focusing on trying to keep his stuff in America. So what Jefferson is going to try and do is send a diplomat to go and speak on our behalf to France to negotiate the purchase of New Orleans. Originally, we only are trying to buy the port. So if you look at where my mouse is, this is where New Orleans is. We said that we would buy this port and this section of Florida right here for $10 million. We weren't even worried about all this other stuff out there. We just wanted to sit there and get this land taken care of. And the way that we tried to sweeten the deal was say, hey, if you refuse, we're going to team up with Great Britain and we're going to take you down. So we were willing to risk our neutrality to get this land. That's how important the port was to us. What's great news for us is Napoleon is actually out of money. He is broke. He is not able to feed his French army. They keep marching out towards the east, towards Russia and Europe, and they're getting thinned and they're starving. So because Napoleon cannot afford to fight us and fight a two-front war, Napoleon actually comes back and counteroffers saying, hey, if you pay us $15 million, we'll give you the whole territory. So that's how we come to own the entire Louisiana Purchase. We get that land for 3 to 4 cents an acre. That is a record real estate deal. There's never been another deal in history that is that good. It's going to double us in size, which means we're growing more powerful by the day. We get everything from the Mississippi River all the way to the Rocky Mountains out there in the west where Colorado and Wyoming are. We're also going to push Western expansion. Because we just got all this land, we need to go out and explore it. And we'll talk about who explores it in just a second. Now let's talk about Jefferson as a person. Remember, we said that Jefferson is a strict interpreter. That means if it's not listed in the Constitution, he does not do it. So here's the constitutional issue I have for you guys. Does the national government actually have power to purchase land from foreign nations? Our Constitution does not say anything explicit about that. But how do we always get around things that are not explicitly stated? You got it, the elastic clause. We stretch the Constitution. Next question I want you to think about, why is this a hypocrisy of the Jefferson administration? Well, because Jefferson's a strict interpreter. He's not supposed to want to use the elastic clause. So this makes him look like a hypocrite because one of the first things he does in his administration is use the elastic clause. Now, the guys that we send out to go exploring are these two guys right here. We've got Lewis and Clark. They have a famed story of going all the way out to the Pacific Northwest. That's where Oregon and Washington and Idaho are. They reach the Pacific Ocean. They track their journey. The only reason they even survive is because of this nice lady who's on our gold dollar, Sacagawea. She is going to help show them the way, and then they navigate their way back. And they have a huge impact on Western expansion because they really do get the lay of the land, all of the different plants, animals, everything that we have to offer. So it's going to help encourage people to go out west. The more people we have out west, the better chance we have at controlling the land. So that's where we're going to stop with Jefferson for part 1. Make sure that you've written down any questions if you have them so that we can go over them with your Q&A. And I will be talking to you guys again soon.